The barn door creaked, a sound that sliced through the humid Tennessee air like a confession. I was 16, and the weight of my secret felt heavier than the hay bales stacked in the loft above. My older brother, Caleb, stood silhouetted against the fading sun, his broad shoulders a familiar anchor in the chaos of my heart. We weren't supposed to be here. The farm, a sprawling relic of our family's past, had been abandoned since Grandpa died. But Caleb, 21 and restless, had insisted we come, his voice low and urgent over breakfast that morning. "It's time, Ethan," he'd said, his blue eyes flickering with something I couldn't name. I trusted him like I always had. He was my brother, my protector, the one who'd taught me how to throw a punch and wipe the blood from my lip before Mom could see. But that summer, something had shifted. His glances lingered too long, his touches, once brotherly, felt like sparks against my skin. The air inside the barn was thick with dust and memory. Caleb tossed his duffel bag onto the dirt floor, the thud echoing like a heartbeat. "You ever feel like you're drowning, Ethan?" he asked, his voice raw, like he'd been holding the words in for years. I froze, my sneakers rooted to the ground. I knew what he meant. I'd felt it too, the suffocating weight of being different in a small town where different meant wrong. "Caleb, what are we doing here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, his boots crunching on the straw. His hand reached out, hovering near my cheek, and I swear I could feel the heat of his skin before he even touched me. My pulse raced, a mix of fear and something else. Something I'd buried deep, something I'd never dared name. "I needed to get away," he said finally, his voice trembling. "And I needed you with me." His fingers brushed my jaw, and the world tilted. This wasn't the Caleb I knew. The football star, the golden boy who charmed every girl in town. This was someone new, someone who saw me, all of me, in a way that made my chest ache with possibility and terror. The farm was our refuge, a place where the world's rules didn't apply. For the next few days, we worked side by side, fixing fences, hauling wood, pretending we were just brothers reclaiming a piece of our heritage. But every night, when the crickets sang and the stars burned bright, we'd sit on the porch of the old farmhouse, sharing a single bottle of warm beer. His shoulder would press against mine, and I'd feel the weight of unspoken words between us. It was on the third night that everything changed. The air was heavy with the scent of honeysuckle, and Caleb's laughter was softer than usual, tinged with something fragile. "You ever think about leaving this place?" he asked, staring out at the fields. "Starting over somewhere no one knows us?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Yeah," I admitted. "But where would we go? And why?" I didn't dare say the rest. "Why does it feel like you're asking me to run away with you?" He turned to me then, his eyes catching the moonlight. "Because I'm tired of hiding, Ethan. Aren't you?" Before I could answer, he leaned in, and his lips brushed mine. A fleeting electric touch that set my world on fire. I pulled back, my heart pounding, my mind screaming that this was wrong, that he was my brother, that we couldn't. But his hand cupped the back of my neck, gentle but firm, and he kissed me again, deeper this time, like he was pouring his soul into mine. For a moment, I let myself fall into it. I let myself feel the truth I'd been running from since I was 12, when I'd first noticed the way my heart raced around him. But then reality crashed in. The weight of our last name, the judgment of our town, the impossible line we just crossed. I shoved him away, my breath ragged. "Caleb, we can't. You're my brother." His face crumpled, a mix of pain and defiance. "I'm not just your brother, Ethan. You know that." He stood, pacing the porch, his hands raking through his blonde hair. "I've been fighting this for years. I thought you felt it too." I did. God help me, I did. But the shame was a living thing, clawing at my insides. "What are we supposed to do?" I whispered. "Pretend this didn't happen? Go back to town and act like everything's normal?" He stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto mine. "We don't go back," he said, his voice steady now. We leave. Together. The words hung between us, a dangerous promise. I wanted to say yes, to grab his hand and run until the world forgot us. But fear was stronger than desire, and I shook my head. I can't, Caleb. I'm not ready. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he sat back down, closer than before, and we stayed there in silence, the night wrapping around us like a fragile cocoon. I thought that was the end of it, that we'd bury this moment and move on. But the farm had other plans for us, secrets waiting to unravel, truths that would break us before they set us free. By the time we left, I was no longer the boy who'd arrived. Caleb had shown me a piece of myself I couldn't unsee, and the weight of him, would haunt me for years. The farm wasn't just a place. It was where I learned that love could be both a gift and a curse, and that some wounds never heal, no matter how far you run. The morning after the kiss, the farm felt different, like it was holding its breath. I woke to the sound of Caleb chopping wood outside, the rhythmic thud of the axe a stark contrast to the chaos in my head. I couldn't look at him without feeling the ghost of his lips on mine, without hearing his words. We don't go back. We avoided talking about it, falling into a routine of chores to keep the silence at bay. The barn needed repairs, the fields needed clearing, and every task was a distraction from the truth we weren't ready to face. But Caleb's presence was everywhere. His laugh as we wrestled a broken fence post from the ground, his hand steadying me when I tripped over a root. Each moment was a reminder of what we'd done, what we couldn't do again. By noon, the heat was unbearable, and we retreated to the shade of an old oak tree. Caleb handed me a canteen, his fingers brushing mine, and I flinched. He noticed, his jaw tightening, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he sat beside me, his shoulder inches from mine, and stared out at the horizon. You remember when we used to come here as kids? He asked, his voice soft. We'd pretend we were explorers, finding new worlds. I nodded, the memory bittersweet. Back then, Caleb had been my hero, the one who'd climbed the highest tree to prove he could. Now, he was something else, someone I wanted in ways I wasn't supposed to. Things were simpler then, I said, my voice barely audible. They don't have to be complicated now, he replied, turning to face me. His eyes were fierce, like he was willing me to believe him. We could make our own rules, Ethan. Out here, no one's watching. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to lean into him, to let the world fall away. But the weight of our family, our town, our name pressed down on me. What about Mom? Dad? What about everyone who expects us to be normal? Normal's a lie, he said, his voice sharp. You think they're happy? Dad working himself to death at the mill? Mom pretending she doesn't see the way he looks at other women? That's not living, Ethan. That's surviving. His words cut deep, exposing a truth I'd tried to ignore. Our family was a facade, a collection of secrets held together by pride. But Caleb's solution, running away, starting over, felt like a dream too big for me to hold. I'm not like you, I said, my voice breaking. I'm not brave enough. He reached for my hand, his grip firm. You are. You just don't know it yet. That night, we found an old journal in the attic of the farmhouse, its pages yellowed and brittle. It belonged to our great-uncle, a man the family never spoke of. As we read, the words painted a picture of a life erased. A man who'd loved another man, who'd been cast out, his name scrubbed from our history. Caleb's face hardened as he read, his fingers tracing the faded ink. They buried him, he said, his voice low. They buried his truth. I felt a chill, not from the night air but from the realization that we were walking the same path. The journal was a warning, but also a mirror, reflecting the love we were too afraid to claim. Caleb closed the book, his hand shaking. We're not them, Ethan. We don't have to end like that. But the fear was stronger than his words. I pulled away, retreating to the porch, where I sat alone, staring at the stars. Caleb didn't follow, and the distance between us felt like a chasm. The farm was supposed to be our escape, but it was becoming a cage, trapping us in a love we couldn't name and a future we couldn't see. The next day, Caleb found a hidden room behind the barn, its door concealed by years of overgrowth. Inside were relics of our great-uncle's life, letters, photographs, a life he'd tried to build before the world tore it down. One photo showed two men, their arms around each other, smiling in a way that made my chest ache. Caleb held it up, his voice steady. "This could be us, Ethan, if we're brave enough." I wanted to take his hand and promise we'd find a place where we could be free. But the weight of our blood, our bond, held me back. "What if we're wrong?" I whispered. What if we're a mistake?" Caleb's eyes darkened, but he didn't let go of the photo. "Love's not a mistake," he said. "Hiding it is." His words stayed with me, a spark in the darkness. But as the days passed, the farm began to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a crucible, forging us into something new or breaking us apart. The farm was alive with secrets, and each one we uncovered pulled us deeper into its grip. By the fifth day, the air between Caleb and me was electric, charged with words we didn't dare speak. The hidden room had become our sanctuary, a place where we could pretend the world outside didn't exist. But pretending wasn't enough, not for Caleb. He was restless, pacing the creaking floorboards as he read another of our great-uncle's letters. "Listen to this," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "I loved him, but the world wouldn't let us be. So we carved out our own place, here, where no one could find us. Ethan, they were like us. They found a way." I sat on an old trunk, my knees pulled to my chest, trying to hold myself together. "And what happened to them, Caleb? They didn't make it. The family erased them." He slammed the letter down, his eyes blazing. "Because they let them. We don't have to. We can fight." "Fight what?" I snapped, my voice louder than I meant. "The whole town? The church? Our parents? You think they'll just let us be together?" The words spilled out, raw and jagged, tearing open the wound we'd been avoiding. "You're my brother, Caleb. How do we fight that?" He crossed the room in 2 strides, his hands gripping my shoulders. "I don't care what they call us," he said, his voice low and fierce. "I love you, Ethan. Not like a brother, like everything." The confession hung between us, heavy and undeniable. I wanted to push him away, to run from the truth, but his hands anchored me, and his eyes held me captive. "I love you too," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. It was the first time I'd said it aloud, and it felt like a dam breaking, flooding me with relief and terror. Caleb's face softened, and he pulled me into his arms, his forehead resting against mine. For a moment we were just us, no labels, no rules, just 2 people who'd found each other in a world that didn't understand. But the moment was fleeting, shattered by the sound of tires crunching on gravel outside. We froze, our hearts pounding in sync. "Who's that?" I whispered, panic rising in my chest. Caleb grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the back of the room. "Stay quiet," he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Through a crack in the wall, we saw a pickup truck, its headlights cutting through the dusk. It was Dad. His broad frame climbed out, his face shadowed but unmistakable. He wasn't supposed to know we were here. Caleb had told him we were camping with friends, a lie to buy us time. But somehow he'd found us. "Stay here," Caleb whispered, but I grabbed his arm, my grip desperate. "Don't go out there," I begged. "He'll know. He'll see it on us." Caleb's jaw tightened, but he nodded. We crouched in the dark, listening as Dad's footsteps circled the farmhouse, his voice calling our names. "Ethan, Caleb, you boys here." There was an edge to his tone, a mix of anger and suspicion that made my stomach churn. He didn't find us that night. After an hour, he climbed back into his truck and drove away, the rumble of the engine fading into the distance. But the fear stayed, a cold weight in my chest. "He knows something," I said, my voice shaking. "He wouldn't have come otherwise." Caleb pulled me close, his arms a shield against the world. "We'll figure it out," he said. "We always do." But the farm was no longer safe. The next morning, we found a note tucked under the windshield of Caleb's truck. "Come home. We need to talk." It wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. Dad's handwriting was as familiar as the guilt in my gut. Caleb crumpled the note, his face hard. "We're not going back," he said. "Not yet." He took my hand, leading me back to the hidden room, where we spent the day reading more of our great-uncle's letters. Each one was a piece of a life we could have, a life we were too afraid to claim. But Caleb was different now, bolder, as if the note had lit a fire in him. "We're not them, Ethan," he said again, his voice a vow. "We're going to make it." That night, under the cover of darkness, we made a plan. We'd leave Tennessee, head west, maybe to California, where people didn't care who you loved. It was a dream, fragile and reckless, but it was ours. As we lay together in the hayloft, our hands intertwined, I let myself believe it could happen. For the first time, I felt like we were more than brothers, more than a secret. We were a possibility. But the farm wasn't done with us yet. It had one more secret to reveal, one that would test our love and force us to face the truth about who we were, and who we could never be. The farm was a labyrinth of memories, each one sharper than the last. By the 7th day, Caleb and I were living on borrowed time, our plan to run away a fragile thread holding us together. The note from Dad had changed everything, a reminder that the world outside was closing in. But inside the hidden room, we were untouchable, wrapped in the echoes of our great-uncle's forbidden love. Caleb was different now, his resolve hardened. He spent hours sketching out routes to California, mapping a future I could barely imagine. "San Francisco," he said, his voice bright with hope. "They've got whole communities there, Ethan. People like us." I wanted to believe him, but the fear was a constant shadow, whispering that we'd never outrun our past. That afternoon, while clearing out the last of the hidden room, we found a locked box under a floorboard. Caleb pried it open, revealing a stack of letters tied with twine, their edges worn but intact. They weren't from our great-uncle. They were from his lover, a man named Thomas, and each word was a dagger to my heart. "I'll wait for you," one letter read. "No matter how long it takes, I'll wait." But the final letter was different, its tone desperate. "They found us. I'm leaving tonight. Come with me or we're done." Caleb's hands shook as he read it aloud. "They didn't make it," he said, his voice hollow. "Thomas left, and our uncle stayed. He chose fear over love." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "We're not going to make the same mistake, Ethan. We're stronger than that." But I wasn't so sure. The weight of our family's history, of Thomas's abandoned love, pressed down on me. "What if we can't do it?" I asked, my voice small. "What if we run, and it's not enough?" Caleb knelt in front of me, his hands cupping my face. "It's enough if we're together," he said. "You're enough." He kissed me then, slow and deliberate, like he was sealing a promise. I melted into him, letting the world fall away, if only for a moment. But the moment didn't last. That night, as we sat on the porch, headlights pierced the darkness again. This time it wasn't just Dad. 2 trucks pulled up, and out stepped Dad, Pastor Reynolds, and Mr. Hayes, the town sheriff. Their faces were grim, their steps heavy with purpose. Caleb grabbed my hand, his grip tight. "Stay calm," he whispered. "Don't let them see us break." Dad's voice boomed across the yard. "Boys, come out. We know you're here." There was no warmth in his tone, only a cold authority that made my blood run cold. Pastor Reynolds stood beside him, clutching a Bible like a weapon, his eyes scanning the darkness. We slipped back into the farmhouse, locking the door behind us. My heart pounded, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. "What do they want?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Caleb's face was pale but determined. "They want to fix us," he said, spitting the word like poison. "They think we're broken. We hid in the attic, crouched among dusty trunks, listening as the men searched the house. Their voices carried, sharp and accusing. "This ain't right," Pastor Reynolds said. "Brothers or not, what they're doing is a sin." Dad's silence was worse than agreement, a heavy void that spoke of shame. They didn't find us that night, but they left another note, this one nailed to the barn door. "Come home, or we'll come back with more." The threat was clear, and it broke something in me. I'd wanted to believe we could escape, that love could be enough. But the world was bigger than us, and it was closing in fast. Caleb tore the note down, his hands shaking with rage. "They don't get to decide who we are," he said, his voice low and fierce. "We're leaving tonight." I nodded, but my heart was heavy. As we packed our bags, I kept seeing Thomas's letters, his plea to run, his lover's choice to stay. I didn't want to be the one who stayed, the one who let fear win. But as we slipped out into the night, the farm's shadows clung to us, whispering that we could never outrun who we were. We made it to Caleb's truck, the engine roaring to life as we sped down the dirt road. The stars above were bright, but they offered no answers. I reached for Caleb's hand, and he squeezed it tight, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "We're going to make it," he said, more to himself than to me. But the farm wasn't done with us, and the secrets we'd uncovered were only the beginning. The road stretched before us, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the Tennessee night. Caleb's truck rattled with every mile, but his grip on my hand was steady, an anchor in the storm of our escape. We were running from our family, our town, the weight of a love we weren't supposed to feel. But the farm's secrets followed us, heavy as the dust we'd left behind. We drove in silence, the radio off, the only sound the hum of the engine and our uneven breaths. I kept glancing in the side mirror, half expecting to see Dad's truck chasing us down. "Where are we going?" I finally asked, my voice small against the vastness of the night. "West," Caleb said, his eyes fixed on the road. "Somewhere we can be us." His voice was steady, but I could hear the strain beneath it, the weight of what we were leaving behind. I wanted to believe in his dream, in a place where we could love without fear, but the memory of Pastor Reynolds's voice, sin, echoed in my mind. We stopped at a gas station just before dawn, the fluorescent lights harsh against the softness of the morning. Caleb filled the tank while I grabbed coffee, my hands shaking as I handed the cashier a crumpled 10. She smiled, oblivious to the storm inside me, and I wondered what it would be like to live without secrets, to be just another guy buying coffee at 5 a.m. Back in the truck, Caleb pulled me close, his lips brushing my forehead. "We're going to be okay," he said, but his voice cracked, betraying the doubt he tried to hide. I nodded, clinging to his warmth, but the fear was a living thing, clawing at my chest. By the time we reached Kentucky, the sun was high, and exhaustion weighed heavy on us both. We found a cheap motel, its neon sign flickering like a warning. In the dim room, Caleb pulled me into his arms, and we kissed like it was the last time, desperate and hungry. "I love you," he whispered against my lips, and I felt the truth of it in my bones. But love wasn't enough to erase the past. That night, as we lay tangled in the motel sheets, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was soft, broken, pleading with us to come home. "Your father's sorry," she said. "We can work this out. Please, Ethan, don't do this." I deleted it before Caleb could hear, but the guilt stayed, a knot in my stomach. The next day we kept driving, the landscape changing from rolling hills to open plains. Caleb talked about San Francisco, about finding a place where we could start over. But the farther we went, the more I felt the pull of what we'd left behind. Not just our family, but the farm, the hidden room, the letters that had shown us a love that didn't survive. I couldn't shake the fear that we were doomed to repeat their story. On the third day, we stopped in a small town in Missouri, the kind of place that felt like home but wasn't. We sat in a diner, sharing a plate of fries, when Caleb reached across the table and took my hand. "We're almost there," he said, his smile bright but fragile. "Just a little farther." But before I could answer, the door swung open, and Dad walked in. His face was hard, his eyes locked on us. I froze, my heart pounding, as he crossed the room. "You boys think you can just run?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can shame this family and walk away?" Caleb stood, his body shielding mine. "We're not going back," he said, his voice steady. "You can't make us." Dad's eyes flickered to our joined hands, and his face twisted with disgust. "You're brothers," he spat. "This ain't right." The diner went quiet, every eye on us, and I felt the weight of their judgment, heavy as the farm's secrets. I stood, my legs shaking, and faced him. "I love him," I said, the words loud in the silence. "And I'm not ashamed." It was the bravest thing I'd ever done, and Caleb's hand tightened around mine, a silent vow. Dad stared at us, his anger warring with something softer. Grief, maybe, or regret. "You'll regret this," he said finally, then turned and walked out, leaving us in the wreckage of our truth. We didn't stay in the diner. We drove on, the silence between us heavy but not empty. Caleb reached for my hand, and I let him hold it, let him anchor me. The farm had changed us, had shown us a love that was both beautiful and brutal, but it had also given us strength, the kind that comes from facing your truth and choosing to live it no matter the cost. Years later, I'd think of the farm and the boy I was, the one who loved his brother in secret. Caleb and I found our place, a small apartment in San Francisco where the world didn't care who we were. We weren't brothers there, not in the way the world saw it. We were just Ethan and Caleb, two people who'd fought for their love and won. The farm still lives inside my soul, a reminder of the secrets we uncovered and the love we claimed. It taught me that love is never a mistake, even when it hurts, even when it breaks you. And every time Caleb smiles at me, his hand warm in mine, I know we made the right choice. We didn't just survive. We lived.